Before we kick off with this episode, I just want to say a huge, wholehearted thank you to everybody that reached out last week when I put that out there. I didn't know if I was going to do it. Bit of a risk, but I wanted to be transparent with why things aren't happening. Thank you so much. It's appreciated. Before we get into this conversation, I do need to put a trigger warning in here because we do touch upon sexual assault and childhood abuse. So if you feel like you may get triggered, please, please, please don't listen to this episode. Okay. This conversation is actually so authentic and so heartfelt. I could actually probably go back and listen to this again. I probably will. I'm not going to lie. Not for my voice, but for hers. I could listen to it all day. We talk about what love is and why and how and what she will accept into her life, which is actually a little bit different to how the conversations have gone so far. I'm going to tell you now, it is a little bit longer than normal, but guess what? There's a break halfway through and you will hear it because we make it obvious. Go get yourself a cup of tea halfway through. Maybe you finish walking the dog. Wait for the next dog walk to go. But otherwise, thank you so much for listening. Any feedback, comments, questions, I'm all ears. As always, just keep it kind. We are having a conversation, as usual, kicking it off in the way that we do, which is MSN styly. So, without further ado, name, sexual preference, and relationship status, please.
Okay, so my name is Rena. I either go by Internet Mum or She Bearer.
Yes.
What is age?
Sexual preference and relationship status.
Okay, I identify as queer. Newish queer, few years in, living pretty loudly in the gay heart of Sydney. And relationship status, independent. Not looking, not interested.
I love it. Not looking, not interested.
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Because there's I've been thinking about this conversation for a long time and all the different things, because this is going to be a different conversation for me, I think, and more challenging, I think, because we have had such different experiences, but you have talked about it and processed it in a different way and have a different outlook to anybody I've spoken to so far.
Great. Love that. Yeah. Love it. The spanner in the works.
Yeah.
Do it.
you come to fuck shit up. And I appreciate that. But actually, because you said about your sexual preference is queer, but it's very new. Is that like what's that like? Because I have the privilege of being in this space, LGBT space, from like all the way back. So I don't know any different.
Yeah, you're a gold star lesbian.
Oh my God, I'm a gold star lesbian. Gold star. It's the only fucking gold star I've got.
Winner.
But how do you, I don't even know, what's that like? I don't even know if that's really a question that you can ask.
To be honest with you, I feel somewhat unqualified to answer that, if that makes any sense. So for a bit of context, I have an adult daughter. I married young, split up young, and got into a cis-het long-term relationship where that now still remains my daughter's stepdad. I get on with both famously. We all turn up to my child's events and have all been an active part in the way that we've raised them, and we all cheer each other on. You know, we've been able to navigate friendships afterwards. It's an interesting one because I identify as queer because I don't feel like when talking in terms of a relationship, I look for a man. I probably identify with just I suppose, deeper aspects of things. And no offense, a little offense, men don't do that for me. So, I would probably say that I specialize more in the kindness sort of love, where I meet people that require just love, not physical, not, relational or anything like that. My work is in kindness and empathy. I work with the terminally ill, people with cancer. And so, so for me, there's different outlets of things, and romantic relationship is not something that I identify as a straight person. I really don't. What that means for me as a queer person in the world, I'm still navigating that. I left my cis-het life to a dream town that I never ever thought I'd be able to afford. And I live where Mardi Gras in Sydney is, and I feel safe to walk the streets. I feel wholly loved and supported by the community. When I'm out in the community, I try to radiate that as well. And there's no expectation of anybody. It's just safety and love. So I think that's where I feel very supported to explore my queerness there. So that's where I strongly identify, but I can't quite put it into words just yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does actually. It's I think I'm doing it an injustice by saying it's actually really sweet. I think that's not quite the right word, but I'm actually not many. I feel like the people that I'm around, not many can identify with being like having that community in a way. I knew of a community when I was younger, but it wasn't in that way. It was very much like it was all centered around drinking, and it was all very kind of a very different way of community. So I'm actually, in a way, envious of it. I think what you describe, and while, it comes with its ups and downs regardless, but what you describe is something that is actually really incredible, especially these days.
Yeah, look, I think as you mentioned that, I think I've always perceived myself like, so there's the definition of queer in the LGBT space. And then there's queer as not really quite fitting in, a little bit odd. And as an immigrant child of a very racist late 1980s in Queensland with a thick Asian accent, I was always slotted as a little bit queer, non-sexual, but queer. And so I think possibly I've co-opted that with my identity as a person in the world, trying to identify myself, my sexuality, my preferences of the community that I choose to be around. I think you've muted yourself.
It's all right. I'm just conscious of all of a sudden I realize what background noise to me is I find is silence, but then realize that Kev was sawing wood. And I was like, that will be potentially being picked up by the microphone.
So, that's fine. I like that. How masked.
Yeah. Just Kev. It's just Kev. But talking about that growing up, because we talked about this before we actually before we started recording, about a couple of us growing up or having to grow up quicker than a lot of other people do.
Yes.
Do you think that having to grow up quicker, you weren't given the time to explore that or process that in a way? Like the relationship
like
stuff
being
was
odd?
being odd. But like, sure.
I had plenty of time. I was by myself as a kid. Yeah. Holy shit. No, look, yes and no. I think growing up in the public school system early on, it was abundantly clear to me that I was an other. Even from, children of immigrants who had the same accent that I do now. I didn't sound like that. I didn't dress like that. And so there's cultural aspects to it as well. There was a real pride in, not even pride, a stubbornness from my adoptive family that brought me here to kind of make like uniform. So it wasn't the same as other kids, that there was all of that. And then there was a level of racism because they couldn't get the same level job that they had in, back home. And so there was a resentment, and therefore it sort of grew into this racism of itself. And then I was not allowed to play with other people because inherently they were all bad because of, for whatever reason, they decided that they looked down on us. So I was an other either way. So I spent a lot of time by myself in the bush on a BMX with sticks, trying to catch bugs and, building dirt ramps to jump off. And, I definitely have always been aware that I was not like other people. And it felt a lot of different things all through life. It still does. But if I didn't have all of that, then I wouldn't feel the confidence now to go into spaces and say, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I deserve to be here too. That's a big one. And I think that's like part of owning yourself is going into those dark, scary corners and shining a light on those as well, even if they may be uncomfortable. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's like a whole thing in itself, that whole, like, I deserve to be here. Because I think actually even those people that have fitted in and had that further privilege still have those I don't deserve to be here moments. Or
we all have imposter syndrome. Holy shit. Like, I wake up in my own bed and I'm like, I don't deserve to be here. What is this? But I worked for it. I can account for all of it. And, like I choose to lead each day with love. And that in and of itself, no matter the scale of it, means I deserve to be exactly here. I think, and that's part of my conversation of the relationship status. Independent, not interested, because this relationship with myself has become so important. It's not theater anymore. In the beginning, when I used to say that I was awkward and clunky and the rest, I didn't give myself the space to celebrate my wins. And then little bit by little bit, you feed yourself a little of what you put out. And then you kind of trade that off a little bit. And it's like, I deserve that, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And, it comes and it goes. Things happen in your life. It knocks the wind out of your sails and you just have to keep chipping away at that. But I'm no good to anyone unless I back myself. So that's my focus these days, is just figure out who I am and stay true to that every day.
Do you think the state of play and how we are as people, especially as how it's presented when we see like TV, when we read books, I brought this up with most people about how the interpretation of relationships and love and needing other people, needing them, wanting them, whatever, has played a huge part in how we kind of like play out relationships or how we expect them to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you think someone is, do you think people are ready for someone, probably not going to articulate this right, but do you think people are ready for someone like you that is saying, I don't need you, but it's almost like that. I don't need you, but I'll want you. Is that like Nanny McPhee? Like,
No.
I'll be there. I'll be there when you need me, but when you
Yeah.
just...
Look, okay. So I think, I've had many conversations about this. And I feel like what it boils down to is how you interpret life. Do you interpret it as, so let's say, even though this isn't being recorded by what we video, it's a long string, right? There are some people that will live and breathe this life thinking they only get one chance to do everything right. And they'll make a couple of very human mistakes. And they won't give themselves the grace of feeling that and evolving and rising to that occasion and seeing maybe it's showing me that this is not the way I'm supposed to go. And yet they keep going, and that becomes like this massive, like unresolved thing in their life. And then they live their life just, day to day with this like ball of regret, and they tick all the boxes, and then they get old and they die. And for me, everything that went wrong has ultimately ended up being right. I've mentioned a few times through my storytelling that I've lived so many lives, right? I've done the young mom career. I was very lazy, stayed married to my daughter's father for 18 years. We were only technically married for like 6 months. And, we were able to keep that because we evolved into friendship. I got to explore in obstacle racing, whereas where I met you, I get to do, things. And I think we don't value failure enough in this life that could show us spectacular things. Failure is seen as such a negative, and people don't listen to that. And for me, I'm so guided by my failures. How big was that failure? What was the collateral damage of that? Do I want to keep going this way? Like, do I really believe in that? Or is this a sign of redirect for me? What have I got to lose? And as we get older, what do we put at stake? And so for me, rather than life being a straight line, I just keep going until I hit that failure and see what other avenues are shown to me. So in the conversation of, is anyone ready for someone like me? Maybe, maybe not. I would like to think that I live with enough love and kindness that if I met someone that had the potential to inspire me and enhance my time, that I would recognize it and give it the oxygen to let that person meet that moment, and it definitely, I feel like romantic love, you should feel honored to have the attention of somebody, but that should be reciprocated as well. And it's not just a moment of, oh my God, I think you're awesome, and we're gonna go do awesome things. It's, oh my God, I think you're awesome, and I think you inspire me to be awesome as well. And let's see where that takes us. And it's got to be collaborative the whole way around. Otherwise, what's the point? Like, I don't know. Yeah. So if anyone's ready for me, cool. I'm not looking for it. Like, give me the old razzle dazzle. And, I would expect if I met someone who did that, the expectation would be equal both ways, otherwise what's it for? So end of that is, I don't particularly mind either way. If anyone's ready for me or not, I'm not going to be a voyeur to my life, waiting for this solar flare kind of love. I've got, not to get on that hustle mindset, but I've got shit to do. I've got goals, I worked really hard at this life. I feel like I've got really good balance of like inside and outside. Why would I wait? Why would I wait?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think, I mean, do you actually believe in, because there are actually people that don't really believe in it, but do you actually believe in romantic love?
I do, but this is an ongoing conversation about self-worth and what you feel you are worthy of. And there are low days when I can wake up feeling like all those beautiful negatives that happened in my life, all of those failures have somehow made me a damaged person, which is wholly untrue. You know, I'm as worthy as anybody else. And, you know, like I know where I've come from and the work that it took to become the person that I am. And I have to believe that there are other people in this world. And I know there are. There's people like yourself and your commune, our other sister, Ginger, who just live with grace and kindness with no expectation of reciprocation.
Yeah.
You just need to believe that there are other people in this world that are focused on the same values, not necessarily at the same point, and trust that that's not the overarching factor in their happiness, nor yours. Like otherwise I would just be destined to be a miserable troll, which is fine. Quite, there are days, you know, I'm quite happy with that.
You were just about like quite looking forward to that.
I'm quite prepared for it. Yeah. No, but I think, definitely. And I've seen, like, I know some people who are in beautiful relationships where they are adored, respected, lift each other up, you know, they all go to therapy too. So, you know, like it's...
That was going to be something I was just about to say, though, is that they're adored, they're respected, but then that person to be able to receive that respectfully in turn, they have to be already reaching a certain level, because
that's
someone that isn't just is wasted.
I feel like big romantic love isn't just a meeting of two souls. It is a commitment to hard work. And I acknowledge that. I also, I would identify as well as a workaholic, and I just don't have the space or the breadth to share that, because I'm really enjoying myself. You know, like I'm really, really just enjoying who I am. What do I do if I'm left to my own devices? I do dumb, fun, whimsical shit for no reason. And, you know, like, how sweet to be able to enjoy that right now. Would I love to have a partner to come home to? Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I would ask, what the hell are you doing here? Get out of my space. Like I'm not there because I know I don't want that responsibility right now, because it takes hard work. You can be dating the most perfect, beautiful creature, but if you are not prepared to move with that and evolve with that and look at yourself when that fails, and for themselves too. I'm not going to say it's a waste of time. It's never a waste of time to be vulnerable and love somebody, but it just feels like a bit of a fool's errand, you know, if you know in yourself.
I think that's really interesting what you just said, like about, I don't want to be responsible for that. That's really interesting. I don't want to be responsible for that, because I think that maybe do we get swept up and away with it, not really thinking about the fact that we are actually, while the other person's not there, we're not there to make them happy, they're not there to make us happy, you know, that is your own thing, but there is still a responsibility though to that other person and to them as a person.
Absolutely, because if you get into a relationship with someone, then that becomes a conversation in compromise. Firstly, it's time. I want to see you more, right? So then you start to adjust your schedule. And then you get to know each other and love each other. And then it's sharing more, like maybe moving in with each other or, going on holiday together, which is a real litmus test for people. And then, sharing money, sharing assets, all of that. And then if it doesn't work out or you hit a speed bump, you've got to address that. And the more you value and respect someone, the quicker you do that, the better. I don't want that. I don't want that. It's not to say that I'm aversive to hard conversations. I love hard conversations. But I don't want to feel responsible for making someone who is a spectacular person feel really shitty because I haven't handled that well. And then that's another conversation of when will you ever be ready, right? And to that, my answer is, well, I've waited. I was a mother at 18. I'm 39 now. I've been single for 6 years. I think I've earned the right to be left alone for a little bit. I'm beholden to nobody but my dog at the moment, and it's bliss. It's great.
I love that. What's really interesting though is I didn't even think about the fact that it has been 6 years. We had known each other, a year by then? We met in Canada.
Well, there were 2 Canadas. You came out of Canada.
We came
what year was
the first Canada we met because we were there for 4 days and hooked up with Margaret. Margaret was like, "Hey, do you wanna get on board? Meet Rin," and then boom.
Yeah. I remember that. And Margaret was like, "Jojo, this is Rena." I was like, "Hey, I'm Potato." I just do whatever I want to do.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't even know, because I'm never very good at remembering meeting people for the first time and stuff like that. I'm really bad at it. But I just know that I walked away from Canada saying to Ginger, because you hadn't really met Ginger by then. You didn't get to meet Ginger properly until the second year. I just know that I was like, you will love her. It was just kind of that thing of this person.
The way I describe yourself and Ginger, you were kindred spirits. You were sisters from, you're just family. As soon as I met you, I don't actually think I met Ginger the first Canada year. No. Definitely met her the second. You guys put a dildo in my suitcase.
The butt plug.
Fantastic. Yeah, the butt plug.
No idea where that butt plug is.
I know exactly where. I left it with my ex. He borrowed the suitcase and he's like, "What the hell?" I'm like, how good's friendship, friend? I still maintain to this day that you guys, it's one of those timeless kinships. You just meet people like that. You meet soulmates. You and Ginge are definitely soulmates. But as far as timelines, because my childhood was such a mess, I'm terrible with timelines too.
But it just made me think. So go back to so you've been single for 6 years. So it kind of ties in with the end of.
Wait, hang on. Let's do proper math on this. So
that was 2019. No, that was UK. Canada was
2017. It was. I came back from. Wait, hang on. We're going to pause.
2017. 2017. Yeah, 2017. UK was 2018, 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got back from Canada too, and then that long weekend, and I broke up.
It's fascinating because that second Canada, I had split up with. No, I hadn't split up with my girlfriend at that point. I was still very much just trying to think of timelines now, because I'm like, hang on a minute, where was I? What was I doing?
We need a whiteboard.
Times just have no meaning. But I think that second one, because I was losing stress weight because it was crazy. And I remember because it was my final year at uni, had a girlfriend,
God, you were
By
still at uni then.
Yeah, it was my final
Sweet baby.
year. Yeah, but I had a girlfriend at the time, but by then I had already known I'd fallen into my usual behaviors of, oh, this wasn't actually meant to be a relationship. Whoops. Shit, what do I
Yeah.
do? And so
But
I
isn't that a
was,
lot of relationships? You just bumble into shit and
yeah,
then you get to a point where you're like, oh,
whoops.
well,
Did it
where's the
again.
eject button on this?
But it took me a
Launch
long
me out of this
time.
one.
Yeah, but it took me a long time. It took me months. Like I remember and our friend at the time took me out for a dog walk. So they're like, we need to talk about your girlfriend. Literally said those lines.
Oh.
But it's going back to it, it occurred to me that you've been single for 6 years. And I think that we have such different feelings, interpretations of that period of being single.
1 second. I would say I've had 2 relationships that have ended quite significantly.
Yeah.
The latest one I don't want to talk about, but since then, I've been very open about. Are you happy to talk about this?
Yes.
Yes. So, like, I'm happy to go into this further if you have any questions that lead into it. But I dated someone around 2019. Oh, they were the bee's knees. Just handsome, gentle, great, quiet. And then, looking back later, just stoic, horribly depressed, over medicating with weed. I have no problems with weed, but that was the go-to. And we would have spectacular dates and share meaningful time and talk about hopes and dreams. And they were always, as we talked about them, which really suited me. We talked about them independently, but the great thing was they were very aligned.
Yeah.
I wanted to end up getting a quiet property somewhere overlooking like a Spanish vista, essentially. And he wanted one overlooking the beach and the bush here in Australia. We got to a point where we were having a conversation and he just said flat out, I'm terribly depressed. I don't think I'm meant to be in a relationship right now. I love you. And that's why we need to let this go. And we didn't talk for a little while. And then the bushfires happened, those huge bushfires that went all down the coast just before COVID. And both our houses were almost affected by it. And we hadn't spoken in a few months. And I sent him a message and I said, hey, mate, do you need help with your gutters? And how are you? It's a very Aussie thing to do. We all have shit in our gutters, I'm little, I'm scrappy, I can climb. And he's like, no, I don't need help. But, are you all right? I've missed you as a friend. What's going on? We didn't talk again for like a week. And I went to message him, no answer. And I just had this feeling. I also get feelings, not to sound too woo-woo about it, but I get real gut feelings. And I feel like I'm guided by my granddad in that respect. But I had this feeling like he hasn't responded. I'm going to call him. And an older woman answered and said, had suicided. And I'm his mother. I'm a detective with the police. And we're trying to piece things together. And that left that threw me into a tailspin. That really had me analyze myself because I was the last, and I later found out the only adult romantic relationship that he had had. What could I have done? How was I involved in the depressive spiral? Like all sorts of questions that kept coming back to me. And then I realized afterwards I'm always going to be left with that. And I was not, he left a mother, a sister, an apprentice that found him. Yeah. And so I think after that, for me, it really was, I swing between, I feel a little bit lonely. I'd love some companionship. Or I don't want to date anyone, but is that because the last time I tried, it was so traumatic?
Yeah.
Or is this sort of a sign that, without disparaging him, I'm free to like really explore who I am, Yeah. So since then, there's been dates and stuff and they've been nice, but yeah, like my relationship with love and connection, my whole life has been extraordinary and odd and fantastical and ridiculous, but weirdly never extreme.
Okay.
Like how like some people love so wildly that it's so unhinged, right? Like
Yeah.
intensity and all of
Mm.
that. And yeah, like mine have never been like that. I've adored partners. It's nearly always been like a collaborative transactional partnership, which then ultimately, I feel wanting more. But yeah, like that was the last time that I properly tried. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I think the lessons that I have from it have been so profound. And yet I feel like we all go through those moments when you lose someone. It doesn't have to end in death, obviously, but
Mm.
when you lose someone and the biggest way to love somebody is to just cut off ties and just disappear from their life.
Mm.
It may not be immediate, but it's you don't often get the opportunity for closure, I think.
Yeah.
So how did yours end after your walk in the park or the walk for the dog?
Oh, like after that fucking story. Well, fuck. I think the thing is the comparison I was going to make, and I think this is what I struggle. I think I struggle with this, being honest with it. It's watching you over those 6 years.
Mm,
I always feel like there's something that I can't quite get to because I haven't experienced those things to be able to get there. Does that
but
make
it's like,
sense?
yeah, but it's like trauma, right?
Mm.
So people who experience deep trauma, if that's unresolved, they love an echo chamber. A whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of yes men who experience this trauma. It's hideous, it's toxic, it's just self-perpetuating, and it just brings everyone down. In Filipino culture, I was just saying this to the other night. In Filipino culture, there's this it's called crab mentality, right? And yeah, so it happens a lot in family dynamics that when there's a success, so say like a little crab, little cutie crab with his little googly eyeballs in a bucket,
Mm.
and he gets to the top, and all those crabs, even despite themselves, will pull that crab down, ripping off limbs. Just one crab getting out cannot happen when they're all destined
Mm.
to get out, right? So when it comes to like, that's how I equate what you're saying, where I feel unreachable in that sense. Some people will stay in that trauma cycle because
Mm.
they don't know any better, or it's so scary to get out of that. But that also happens with joy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And none of it, none of it is quantifiable. There is no other person in this world you will
Yeah.
meet, even your twin sister, who will have the same life experiences as you, where you can go, you know what, tit for tat,
But and this is the
we
thing, even
deserve
with
this.
even with
Yeah,
I actually hope to get her on here so we can talk, because I think that
nice.
that would be, because of the fact that we are so different, and actually we are so different, and our lives have played out so differently, but in some respects I can't help but attribute part of that to me being gay, because growing up gay
Mm,
in the like late 80s early 90s, there was nothing
yeah,
there. And growing up gay, but also coming from a broken like a broken home, and stuff like that, that affected me in a different way. And I'm still having to uh, create new pathways so that I don't
yeah,
default into stuff. But going
yeah.
back to that, like, so my last relationship was we broke up March 2017. So you're looking at, yeah, it's more than 6 years now.
Yeah.
But I had known for a while that it wasn't right. But I was doing that
Mm.
thing that I do, which is waiting for them to break up with me so I didn't have to do it. Like,
So you're conflict aversive. You just
yeah,
like
I hate
hide. What do you
conflict.
do?
I
You just
absolutely,
hide.
I literally hate conflict. So I would just, yeah. I'd be waiting for
But
them
you
to do it.
get so close. You have such a naturally intellectual mind to hold a concept and like roll it around in your hand to understand it almost obsessively.
Mm-hmm.
And is that not the verge of a breakthrough to resolve something? What do you
It's
do?
so
Chuck it
close.
like a fucking bomb and run? Like,
Yeah,
go.
literally like a fucking take out the pin, launch it, leg it the other way. But that's why I was literally 1 month off 4 years of therapy to kind of not undo these things, but to do new pathways, because you can't undo what has already been done. You can only change what will be. And
acknowledging that is the biggest part.
Yeah.
Acknowledging it, owning it, and saying, I had a part to play.
Yeah. And absolutely. I'm all about that now. I'm like, I was a dickhead. Like, I had a part to play in that. Yes, they still do. It's not all on me. But I think, that last one, we joke about the fact that I broke up with her via text message.
Yeah, right.
Because she wouldn't pick up the phone. She knew it was happening. She knew it was coming. We knew it was coming. And she wouldn't pick up the phone. She wouldn't do that. There's something, again, going back to that whole thing about the difference between you and I, and like how I see that is that I say this, I think by the time people hear this, they're going to have heard me say this multiple times. But there's something that there's a part of this world that I have yet to experience that so many people have. Like, I don't actually know anybody that hasn't experienced all these things of like that feeling of knowing someone's waiting at home for you, or like that feeling of waiting for someone to come home, that arguing with them about the fact that they forgot to bring something home from the supermarket, or like that they didn't do something.
Well, I mean, you can pick a fight with the cats, I guess.
I'll always lose.
Yeah, fair. No, look, I think that is important. I don't feel like that's necessarily tied to romantic relationships. And I'm not saying that you're missing out if you haven't experienced it, but I think we as a society wholly overvalue that to the point where we sacrifice, or also don't even mention the value of self in that. It's almost like people cease to exist until they find their person, right? And that defines, we came home and then he forgot to pick up washing powder, and then we had this fight about it, and he slept on the couch. And so, like what drives you? What makes you, your interest, like watching movies, what kind of movies, or whatever he wants to watch, or whatever I want to, just, I feel like this obsessive nature about pairing up makes people who aren't a part of a pair feel like an other. And as I mentioned with my relationship with, exactly. I feel like that does a disservice to people who are brave enough to be independent, feel like there's something wrong with them. When I feel now, as someone who has chosen this, for a long time I thought that I was destined for it, like I didn't want that. That's a long conversation about self-love and the rest, but I would love to be a part of a pair if I felt like I contributed to elevating that person. Until that time, I want to enjoy everything that comes with being free, like it's not a negative thing to be a sole person. Of course, loneliness is a thing. When I was living up the coast by myself for about 4 years, I had to have really deep conversations with myself about alone versus lonely.
Yes, that fucking concept.
Yes. And like trying, like, firstly, you as a child who didn't receive much love, right, from my parents, stereotypically, you would reach out with sex, which is not something that you identify with, the sexual nature of things, like obviously getting on the apps, getting a pickle tickle, great. but that leaves you with something else. I know, I saw you wince. Jojo just winced, everybody. Gold star lesbian.
Thank you.
But then it was also trying to reach out to friends from my recent old relationship, and they didn't know how to handle me by myself. And then reaching out to old friends from before that relationship, and I was living, in inverted commas, too far away. I was only an hour and a half train ride away, maybe an hour drive north. And so I really had to sit with myself and have that conversation. Like, I had a beautiful house with a beautiful view. I got to do whatever I wanted. Like, it's perspective shifting, Like, so for me, that I don't feel like you're missing out on things that will be with you when you're on your deathbed. That's my big yardstick for me. When I challenge myself, all I want out of this life is to be cackling on my deathbed saying, yes, I gave everything a crack that I wanted to. I thought of the dumbest, ridiculous shit and I had to go.
Yeah.
And I regret nothing. You have the potential to have such fulfilling, enriched, loving relationships with the community that you create around you, that I don't feel the value that society puts into romantic relationships is worth as much as people saying. I'd love you to pair up with someone, but man, I'd feel shitty if I was your friend having to take you on a dog walk again. Nah. Figure it out, Joe. Nah. Figure it out.
I think the thing for me is like there is a like that alone and loneliness thing is you happen to kind of like take a moment and go, hang on a minute, am I feeling lonely or alone? But there are perspectives. Like I've had to really understand myself and what I have to get to grips with who I am as a person, what I want or need. And not to be able to actually
want and need is a very important conversation to alone and lonely. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's some things that just have in the last couple of years, especially through therapy, that have really highlighted to me the person that I actually am, that a lot of people don't realize, or a lot of people joke about. So, like people joke about the fact that I don't hug and stuff like that. Well, actually I do. But for a lot of people, I don't hug because actually my body tells me before my brain catches up that I don't trust that person.
I was going to say, you and I have no problem hugging. None. But none whatsoever.
There's a physical part of it that I don't want to say that I'm absolutely desperate for, but that has this need to be fulfilled. Like, we were talking just before we hit record about going to see a film last night. It was traumatizing, and it sounds really ridiculous, but it was really traumatizing even 12 hours later. But there was this want in me to just like bury my face in someone's neck, like in someone that I trusted in that safe space, which I don't have. And I'm so aware with all the things that I'm going through and have been through over the last couple of years, it's been so glaringly there that I never actually had it. So and I'm apparently a very physical person, which fucks me off. But this fucks me off.
You decide when you're a physical person.
But there's this thing, and I'm like envious of other people that have that, but also I have still got to learn to be able to do that with somebody. Because it's not that I will get with somebody and they'll be like, oh, I'm going to hug you now and I'm feeling sad, so can I get a hug?
Yeah.
I've still actually got to get through that barrier that I created throughout the years of like, don't touch me.
Yeah. Firstly, that barrier doesn't need to be navigated alone. That's that whole conversation of you'll never be ready, and it's part of meeting the moment when you meet someone spectacular. But also it is inherently human to want and yearn for connection, right? I understand that feeling very deeply.
I accepted that. I was like so pissed off.
It's like, no, but
passe.
I don't choose that. Oh,
No.
I'm the one who's saying I don't want the responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, someone hug me. No, but like there's hold me. There's I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's that feeling of wanting to reach out to someone and touch them and know that that touch is just for you, because they have chosen you, you have chosen them. My conversation with myself is that worth the life that I'm living now? No. But as someone who hasn't experienced that, I understand that. And especially coming from a broken background as children, you want something that you can call your own, right? And to have someone that you, whether you love or care deeply for, but you're in a relationship with them, it's consensual, it's welcomed, and just for them to intuit you, and it's non-verbal, it's they see you, they know you. I get that. I hope you get that. Yeah, I know that feeling very, very well. And I've known times when I have deeply yearned for it, even before my mind knew it. But by then I was so ADHD that I was on to the next thing, convincing myself that, like, I probably panic bought a kayak the last time I felt that yearning.
That reminds me, I still need to sell mine.
Do it.
I don't know if you want to go into this, but it just,
Sure.
there's...
Wait, may I have a wee break, please?
Let's have a wee break. I ask this of everybody because I do truly think that actually it's different interpretations for everybody, but also I'm very fascinated by the fact that some people can't actually answer the question.
Nice.
Is to you, and maybe this has changed over time because of the fact that you have done a lot of like evolving, but what does love actually feel like? What, like romantic love? I'm not talking like the love that you have for your kid. I'm not talking about the love you have for your friends.
Oh, like, romantic love.
What does romantic love feel like? Because I actually am starting to see that people don't seem to be able to put it into words, but also because they don't seem to, one, have the vocabulary, but also because I sometimes wonder if they actually are.
I would say romantic love is this as I would like it to feel, and that I believe and aspire to feel and give, because I know what that looks like. I know exactly what that looks like, and I haven't met the person yet.
Okay, so tell me what that is.
I feel so I have elected to be independent. Exploring my freedom, exploring, at the moment, it's a commitment to exploring my fears, my healing my inner child, just kind of doing what I want to do. And I feel like a peak romantic love for me would be close to freedom, because you find someone who falls in line and completely blows away the barriers that you have for yourself. You meet someone who rises to that moment and they're like, I am here and I have put in so much work to be here now. But then so have you. And when you meet someone, like, you have those loving feelings of being excited and inspired by someone, and you do all those things, and that's really great and it's thrilling, and there's attraction and stuff. But when all of that falls away, when you start to make decisions with that person in mind, and it stops being about compromise and it feels about elevating, even if that's on a micro level of just, I think this will perk up our day. Let's go get a coffee and go for a walk. And I was going to do some work, but that can wait. And then you go for this walk and you just talk shit, and you have no plans for the walk and you just mosey. and you get to learn a little bit more about the person that you're with.
Yeah.
And you discuss it and you take away from that. And if you learn nothing of yourself, you've learned a little bit more about the person that you choose to be with.
Yeah.
And like for me, I think not only is that about work, it's about vulnerability. It's about saying, I had a plan. I had a great plan. It was bloody fantastic. It was going to take me right to the finish line.
Yeah.
And I choose you and you choose me. And let's see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what love is. Like romantic love, like falling in love is not an isolated singular event.
Yeah.
You tend to it. You tend to it like plants. You keep checking in. Is this still what you want? Do you consent? Do you choose?
Yeah.
Above all, do you choose? Like that to me is the freedom, because then you have someone go, you know what? I'm in. I'm so in. This is so fucking rad. Even when today was boring, tomorrow might be boring. Whatever. I choose to do this with you. That's when you have the ultimate freedom, because if you fall apart, there is someone there that is always backing your play, wherever that goes.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is what romantic love should feel like. And I feel like we all have the potential for that. If we can just shed the ego, work through the trauma, and just give love. And like for yourself and I, who came from broken childhoods, that's been really hard to identify what love is and what you give. And sometimes, that turns into people pleasing, right? And then you're left in the dust going, what about me? Like all of it is work. But if you meet the person who inspires and elevates you and makes you feel so worthy to have a place at a table you want to be at and grow, then that's as good as it gets as far as romantic love. Like there's never going to be a perfect person. What is a perfect person? You can't ask for it if you're not one,
Yeah.
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 So that to me, it's like romantic love is freedom. If you can give me a better offer than the love I give myself, then I'm paying attention, because I know exactly the pathway to heal myself day by day. If you can give me a better offer, I'm all ears. Until such time,
That's in a space where you've been doing the work, you keep doing the work.
Yeah. And you know what? You sometimes do the work, and then the person that you love, it may not even be the same sort of thing, but you're like, hey, I learned this little thing from doing the work. Would you like to learn some of the thing about doing the work? Like it almost feels like a little secret between people, like, because you choose it. It's like, here, have this life hack. I want you to grow too.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So that is where I don't want to say you want to get to, but you're open to have.
Yeah, knock my socks off. Shit.
Yeah.
I would be so stoked. And I wouldn't shut up about it either, because I feel like we as a society have become so insular about love. My biggest outlet for love, I will tell you now, is in my work. I work in breast cancer. I manage surgeons, and we meet patients who have benign and malignant disease. And a lot of our benigns are very anxious people. They have nothing to worry about. Sometimes they look for a diagnosis. And then you meet people who have a malignancy. They have breast cancer. They need intensive treatment. And you're going to meet little tiny dove-like women and men who look like they can't make a decision to save their lives. And they're told they have this really heavy diagnosis, and they've got all this family and all this love, and it just smothers them. And they go, enough. I'm going to make these decisions for myself. And then you have some that are so strong, and they get this diagnosis and they fall apart. And their family have always known them to be independent. So they're kind of, a step away. And so they're sort of scrambling. And in both ways, I have a place to put my love, like, so I feel like that really bridges the gap for me. I wasn't a toucher, I wasn't a hugger, and yet in a consensual space with my work, I'm able to touch someone on the arm and say, hey, how do we navigate this? And I'm so privileged to be a part of a chapter in someone's life that is so intense, oftentimes the first time they look at their mortality.
Yeah.
And I get to be a person who gives nothing but kindness and grace and love. It's your decision. It's your choice. What can we do? So I get that outlet every day. Yeah, so that's where I live, in a really privileged space. It's very heavy, and I think it takes a lot away from my capacity in my personal life. But I also feel with the decision to be, or to relinquish responsibility of finding a partnership at this point, it sort of works, right? Yeah, like I get to give love. I get to give love every day. It makes me a better person. That's a weird standard for people, though. Like, I think I can be quite intimidating in that respect, because my job is very intense. And then myself as a person, I don't think I'm intense. I think I really value my own introspection and my emotional intelligence. And for the right person, that won't be intimidating, because they'll have done it for themselves.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes that has to be a thing, is that if you find someone else, that they have to have done, because anybody that previous relationship wise, if they were to if I was to be face to face with them now, it wouldn't even be a let's try it. It would be a no.
Yeah.
Because you can't really be a person that does the work and then be with a person that isn't doing the work. That just doesn't work.
Unless you want to be someone's mother.
Yeah.
And some people do. Some people really do. They find value in being the emotional crutch for people. The problem solver, the fixer, and that's great. That's great for them. But could never be me. Like, we talk a lot of shit. We talk a lot of shit about, like, I'll tag you in videos of like dumb, stupid stuff. I had a terrible fear of heights until you and I went on a trip together, which I think you're coming back to. And I'll tag you in things that are thrilling, that are exciting, adventurous, and the rest. And we may never get to all of them, but I have every intention of getting to some of them. That, in scale with being an emotional crutch for someone, it doesn't fall in line with my fantasy of cackling on my deathbed while everyone's trying to shut me up for the night. Like, no way.
Yeah.
No way.
Not at all. Not at all. And I think so. This is before before our pee break. There was something else, which was what I found previous relationships. Like, there's like relationships after those previous relationships. There has not been. But what I did find, especially in three of them, one of them was very.
Where did you go, you huss?
I was like, I mean, they only last. Look, I'm 38, hitting 39 this year. My relationships last about 3 months, so actually there could be quite a few in there if it was. But there's a 6-year gap. There's gaps.
I won't tell.
Nope.
Not my place.
What's interesting, it hasn't come up with other people in the same way, but one thing that I think also has to be navigated, especially, I don't know, well, maybe in a heterosexual relationship, it would be that it would be the opposite sex for that reason. But that idea of being able to, so my friendships, I don't have many friendships. I don't have the capacity to have many friendships. It's not in my nature. I thought when I was growing up that made you a successful and like a person. And then I came to realize that actually, no, having many friendships and them not being very authentic just
Yeah, if you're an emotional peanut,
Yeah.
then you've got a million friendships.
Yeah. And
No.
I value the friendships that I have created especially over the last 8 years, at least. They have helped me become the person I am and the person I'm becoming. But what I have found is that the relationship I've been in have been threatened by those relationships. As we know, I'm a lesbian. So my relationships with other women, my friendships, my solid, authentic friendships are all women. And there's always been this issue with that. Now, I imagine that probably plays out in heterosexual relationships where if women had male friends and males had female friends and what have you.
It's very primitive. It's very it comes from look, I don't want to say childish, but it comes from a primal space, right? Like in part of choosing a partner, in a perfect world, they fulfill all your needs. And yet
that's not possible.
That cannot be true. That cannot be true. To live an enriched, fulfilling life, you need to have multiple facets of yourself. And like, I feel like relationships need to have the same feeling as home. So our mutual friend, Brian, he's Swedish. And I don't even know if it's Swedish. I could be very ignorant right now, but there's that, oh no, I think it's Danish. Sorry, Brian. The concept of hygge, which is a sense of coziness, like in your home. I feel like that's what romantic relationships should feel like. And if you are secure in your relationship, it feels a little bit hunt and gathery, but you go out and you live your life to your best potential, and then you come home and you rejuvenate, you reinvigorate, you top up all of your resources by being home. You come home and you share what you've learned from the world, right? Like, I don't, contrary to all the myth and lore that I post that seems wholly unhinged, I've never been a jealous person. I'm not, nobody is my property.
Yeah.
Right. And just as I choose to be in the spaces that I am in, I would hope that the partner that I choose feels like they have the choice to be there and also in kind, the choice to leave. I'm never going to fulfill one person's needs because I have my own.
Yeah.
So I feel like that sort of mindset of being threatened by your friends comes from a primal, unhealed or unaddressed space. And that has very little to do with you.
Yeah.
And so much to do with them, you know. So if you carried any of that because of consistency, like previous partners have always felt threatened. If I were you, I would see that as, wow, these people feel like my chosen family fulfill these needs. Like, they need to rise to that occasion, because it's not that you're flaunting it. It's that these people fulfill needs you have that your partner never could. That's so bizarre to me. That's so weird.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but
derogatory weird. I love weird, but like derogatory weird. Grow up.
It is an interesting place to be, where you have to navigate friendships and romantic relationships and that kind of space, because you want them all to get along and stuff. I mean, we went away for a couple of days, didn't we? We went to Spain. And I feel, and again, I've said this before to other people, is that I feel like I'm kind of doing that thing that in therapy where you start peeling back the layers. And I feel like that's where I am at with the love I have for my friends and how I show up for my friends and things like that is kind of like a step closer to being able to do that and entertain that with a romantic relationship. You know, we spent a bit of time, you know, in between trying to get food poisoning, we spent a bit of time trying to, you know, talking about authentic friendship and what that really meant. And I think that not these grand gestures, it's the simple things. It's those showing up. It's those sending, like, those moments of going, I saw this and I thought of you, and sending that meme, and just not, it's not these big things. And I think I especially grew up thinking, because I didn't have anything to anchor to in my actual space. So it was TV, it was film, it was all of that, of these big declarations. And this is how it is. They need to be your person. And it's this whole thing. And like, but it's all the spaces in between.
Yeah. That's so interesting that's the mindset that you came into with that. So like, couple of things that I don't particularly want to get into, but the way that we met, I think subliminally, I was aware that my relationship was falling apart. I went into a bit of self-destruct in my commitment to living loudly. I think pretty much everybody saw, and I was quite open with it a little bit later, that my relationship had ended. And for me, that trip, firstly, meeting you and in the space when I really needed soulmates, that was divinity. I'm not a religious person. I have faith in intuition. I have, like, again, not woo-woo, but I think people come into your space at the right time in the way that they're meant to come in. And in that same belief, you let love pass through you. And I just really needed pure love when I met you guys, and I got that, and I wanted to explore that further. And for me, that's how we ended up with the trip together to Spain. And for me, it was so important to me, as my world was falling apart, to understand non-transactional friendship, because up until that point, looking back, I suddenly felt like the curtain had fallen. And my whole life before then was theatre. Like, obviously, it was all significant. I've loved every moment of my life. I cannot regret it. But, being in a cis-het relationship with a mortgage, with a kid, it was like, was that ever really me? It was me. I was living it. I was doing it. But was that me? If these moments of opportunity and grace didn't happen, would I have chosen the same path? And, it came down to, like, the friends that I had, if I couldn't provide them with anything, would they still be my friends?
Yeah.
And it kind of felt matrixy. I was like, I don't know who to trust. I don't know where to put my energy right now with what little energy I have. And let's take this trip and let's just unpack some bullshit. And we really did. We did some dumb shit. We went for so many moseys. I remember us walking straight down, like, Malaga, this beautiful, like, it was like out of a movie, just like white tiles on the ground, palm trees everywhere. And we were talking about your relationship history. And like the entire focus of that was, does friendship exist non-transactionally? And for me, that felt like, can I let my guard down with people because they're never going to come at me with receipts? Can I grow as a person and trust that the love that I put into the moment is not going to get thrown back at me? Like, how do I move on from this old life, right? And that for me will forever be a favorite trip, because I felt like I got my answers there. We didn't directly address things specifically, but fuck, we went deep. Like, we talked about, like, our histories, our faults, but it never felt like a trauma echo chamber either.
There was no trauma bonding in that way.
No, it was just like, this is my trauma and this is why this. And do you want to grab some paella?
And do you want to eat it the next day in a hot car? That's fine.
Yeah. That's it. I nearly poisoned Jojo. I had a hankering for fresh paella and left it in the car in direct sunlight. We got zazzled by the accommodation, took a lot of photos, fell asleep, woke up, and I was like, oh, paella. Wait, I'll eat that. I think I may have convinced you to have a little bit of rice in it, but I don't think you were as far into that as I was.
I was driving. I couldn't.
I was happy to feed you. But if we both die, what's your insurance like on this trip? But yeah, no, like for me, that was such a valuable trip for me because I really needed to know that there was good in this world. And I think I always knew whether or not you had the answers, that you would be able to articulate where you stood in that. And if there was a like mindset in it. And I would have taken that however that went, and it's given me such freedom now to shed my version of identifying myself as awkward and really leaning into, I don't quite know if I belong here, but I'm good of heart and I'm going to give it a crack. And if not, I'm going to drag my chair somewhere else and give that a crack, like, and like a trail run, like leave love and pretend like you were never there at the end of it, just leave it better than you found it. I feel like that's how we need to treat love with kindness, like it's not something to lord over people. It's not something that God, it's such a privilege to have love in all its forms.
Again, it goes back to it's not transactional.
No, you give it freely because you want to. And it's all about abundance. It's not a finite resource. You can always create love. And even if you don't feel like you experienced it as a kid, I still don't know what love looks like, right? But I give it every day, right? I find it in nooks and crannies. Like I post photos of like doorways that make me feel emotional, and you'll message me and be like, I love those door photos. I'm like, so do I. Oh my God. I was just in a mood. Love is everywhere. Love is everywhere, and yet we glorify it to be this one heteronormative prize, which is so unachievable for so many people. And it's bullshit. It really is. It really is.
I think you've just said it there, is that it totally encompasses how I felt for a long time about it, is that it was unachievable for me.
Yeah.
And now it's not.
Yeah. Because you're not a straight person looking for some guy to sweep you off your feet. You are an independent, free thinking, fully, wholly realized woman in this world who is quite capable of making decisions for yourself, changing your mind, evolving. How could you ever fit into that? How could you ever? It's so unrealistic.
It is. We're gonna wrap it up. However, because I feel like we could just end up just hours. And
sorry,
this
my
is
bad.
not. No, not at all. I mean, I'm just not trying to rival Joe Rogan here.
Yeah.
But one thing I've given to everybody that's been on here is the opportunity to ask me a question before we wrap up.
Okay.
People have been interesting in their questions. You don't have to, but if you had a question, what is it?
If love was something that you felt was accessible to you, romantic love, I mean, when in your life would you have wanted it most? In your life lived thus far?
That's really tough because I'm a different person every day. Like, with everything you learn, with everything that you do, I think romantic love, when would I need it most?
Wait, no, that's two questions then, because I asked want.
Oh, sorry, say that again. So,
and then no. Okay. No, answer two then. I've gone for a twofer. When would you have wanted it most? So someone to be there. And when do you think you'd have needed it?
I think I would have wanted it most. This is really interesting, actually, because I think immediately my brain switched it round, but actually flip it. And I think I would have wanted it most.
Yes.
That's it's not that you're stumping me. It's just there's images in my brain that come up,
Yeah.
which are
Because are you seeing forks in the road? Are you
I'm
seeing
seeing
moments when?
yeah. So would I have wanted it most? Would have been. I almost think that they were actually intertwined. When I wanted it most, when I needed it most.
Mm.
The one thing that's very powerful coming through, anybody that knows me knows that I will be like, this image came in my brain and that's it. Like, and now this is what's happening.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can do this without crying. So,
Joe.
yeah, no. So one thing I realized with therapy and why I struggled to cry in therapy was because the lack of physical comfort, because they can't provide that physical comfort. And I realized that was something that I kind of came to understand was an issue for me, was because when someone is in crisis, when someone is sad, when someone is whatever, my go-to is to provide them with someone to listen to, but also physical comfort. Like, I will not hesitate, as much as people see me as that person that doesn't hug and doesn't allow people to touch them. I will not hesitate to give them a hug, wrap my arms around them, give them a hand, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing for me was when I probably needed it most, when I felt, and this is where I started to understand that I needed physical touch as a comfort.
Take your time.
Yeah. Was when my granddad died.
I thought that. Yeah.
Because
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's one of those things. So you have those things that you talk about that can whatever, but because it was unexpected. We knew, him dying wasn't unexpected, but he was the father figure for us. We didn't know any different.
Yeah.
He was there for me. I have it, like he would take me over the road and watch me play football in the rain. He would play goalkeeper. He would, I'm jealousizing him because I think we do that in death. He had his faults.
Yeah.
But he was there when my father wasn't. And so I sat that day with him. I was reading to him. So this was back in 2018 because 2018 because it was before the pandemic. Was a thing.
I remember it.
Yeah.
I remember your post about it.
We were sat. He was back at in his home. Mum was looking after him and stuff. Nurse came over and was like, "Yeah, we'll give him something because he's a little bit, he's struggling a little bit and stuff like that." So she was like, "Yeah, this does mean it may be a couple of, still going to be a couple of days." She gave him this injection or whatever it was. And Mum was like, "I'm just going to go run a few errands. Is that okay?" And I was like, "Absolutely fine. I'm still sitting here reading to him, just reading my book."
Yeah.
So I was just throughout the day reading to him. And anyway, Mum leaves. And not really that long after, there's something incredibly beautiful but devastating in being there with someone you love wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
Listening to their heartbeat slow. Yeah. And I, throughout the day, have been like, Granddad, you can let go. And I believed myself at the time that that's how I felt. And then as it was,
I was going to say, did you believe that, or were you comforting by saying that?
Well, as I realized it was happening, I had my hand on his chest, it was hot, his heartbeat, his breathing. And then I begged him to not go.
Oh,
which
Jojo.
I have guilt for, but I understand that was just a reaction in the time.
Yeah.
And So I called it happened. So I called my mum and I was absolutely like, oh my God, you need to come home. You need to come home. She did. She came back and she came through the door. Bear in mind, I don't have physical affection with my parents. She came through the door and I was fucking devastated. I was chaos. I was just crying, bawling my eyes out. And she held me, but I didn't take comfort in it.
No.
And I sat with him. I wouldn't leave the room. I didn't want him to be alone while everybody, you've got to do the things you got to do after someone dies.
Yeah.
Read to him. And then my sisters came over, my niece came over. And I was like, and I think my eldest sister said, no, I'll sit with him. You go out. You go and sit somewhere else. You go and just take a break. I'll sit with him. I'll sit with him. Okay. All right. I've been reading a book. And I think it really hit home to me because it was Christmas Eve. I went back to sisters and all four of us. It was actually really strange that my eldest sister had come back that year from Australia for a month. Yeah. And it was just how it was. Her and my other sister repaired the relationship. It was a gift that my granddad gave without even knowing.
Yeah. But
I was so aware throughout this whole thing that I needed comfort from somebody that wasn't a friend, that wasn't a family member, that it was for me.
Yeah.
I was constantly reminded throughout that whole situation. I fell asleep on the sofa because I was supposed to be going home and just spending Christmas kind of on my own. Being around
That's around your birthday as well,
yeah.
Sorry.
But I was so aware, and that has continued up until this day with all the things I go through.
Was that the first time you became aware of that?
Yeah.
Like in that sense? Yeah, okay.
I was
so that was a real watershed moment for you.
Yeah, and I remember actually it was also the first time I told someone I couldn't be there for them.
Yeah, okay.
Which was
who?
So a mutual friend of ours got in contact at the end of the year. She didn't know what was going on. I hadn't.
Right.
It's not something I was actively speaking publicly about. And she got in touch and this, that, and the other. And I was just like, I'm really sorry, but I just can't be there for you right now. And it was the first time I had put my needs first. Because normally I'm like, drop my needs, drop everything. What do you need from me? I will give you. But it was this reminder that, because all my sisters are married, obviously my dad's married, and for my mum this is a bit different. She was on her own as well, so I don't take away from her what it would have been for her because it was her dad. But it became so glaringly obvious that I had this, and I don't want to call it a hole, but it's this feeling in my chest that I just didn't have that person that I could come home to and just almost the what I have in my brain is literally, I'm a very visual person, so this, how it plays out, but just to literally, it became very aware that I just didn't have that person to just look at and just my face say, I need you, and then just crawl on top of them, bury my face in the neck, and just wish the world to go away.
Yeah.
And I think that was, and I have that now, in so many, you're welcome, but I have that now in so many things that I'm having to go through over the last few years that have been very difficult. It's glaring obvious. It's such a physical thing that I have to struggle with and just deal with every day, in that I don't have that. Like, again, that film I watched last night was so fucking traumatizing. All I wanted to do was just, I don't know why I have a thing about necks, but like just to bury my face in his neck.
It's fine. At least it's not feet.
Yeah. No. But it became, and unfortunately what happened after my granddad died was a kind of destruction of a few relationships and things. But that was when it was like, oh, oh, shit. Oh, shit. That's what I want. And that's actually what I need.
So okay, all right. Sorry, I know we're winding this up, but I feel like a really important conversation that a lot of Western culture doesn't have, that I feel Eastern culture has a really good hold of, is that love and grief are intrinsically tied. So for childhoods where you don't receive that fundamental love and care, like I learned this in therapy from an Eastern doctor. Um, I'm grieving a childhood I never had. So could you be grieving a love that you've never had? Like, you almost don't feel entitled because you've never held it. And yet it's there, it's ever present. It's in everything that you look at when you feel vulnerable. And, like grief takes you. It doesn't warn you when it happens. And yet you just, the only way is through. And you need to roll with it. It's like a big wave dumping you, right? Like you just got to strap yourself in and roll with it until it's gone. And like, I almost feel like the way that you articulated that, it's a grief of something that you definitely deserve, right? But it actually almost doesn't matter that you haven't had it, but to know that it's something that exists for you. There's a reality in you. It doesn't have a face, it doesn't have a name, but you feel like there's a love that you can give where you are worthy of getting that back. And I feel like that is, I won't get into the conversation about hope, but like that's something that deserves oxygen to grow, like if it's something that meaningful to you, then these conversations that you have with people about how they identify love are so important because it helps you piece together what you're looking for, not just outwardly, but inwardly as well. Because like grief, my therapist, sorry, excuse me, after I cried and cried and cried my face off, they said that grief is love that you cannot place. So could that have been a cataclysmic moment with your grandfather where you got to identify something you've never known? And, now it feels like you feel like Sisyphus with this rock. And you're like, I just need to find love. The peak of this mountain is love. And I just need to get to the top of it and push this fucking rock off. Right.
Yeah.
But like, it almost feels like a burden sometimes because you don't know what you're looking for. You don't know the markers in which this is possibly what this is. And you could get it wrong a million times. But if it means seeing it, touching it, smelling it, hearing it, feeling it, like that might just be worth it. I feel like that's a moment for you, that like a gift. And you may be the only person I know who has such a tight bond with your grandfather as I do. And I didn't get that closure with my grandfather. But could that not have been a parting gift that in that moment you felt this sudden wave of grief on top of grief where this has now changed the trajectory of where you're going, that this has become so important to you, I feel very privileged to be able to have a conversation with you about this. So thank you.
No, thank you. I've been very excited, but also just know that I am always in appreciation of you, not for what you can give me, but for how you make me feel.
Aww. Me with my razzle dazzle.
Give them the old razzle.
Let's have another chat. Let's have another chat sometime about this because like I feel like it flits and floats and like for another conversation, I often feel like I get stuck in a rut as well because I choose this. It's just me, myself, and I. And where does that get me? If love is the great leveler of all things, where does that put us? Yeah. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I really I feel very honored to have been part of this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you, Dee.